Alrighty, so this is Susan Patton. Alright, I'm lying. This is Susan Patton. It is her, but it's like maybe 30, 20 years ago. But anyway, she's the female a few months back that wrote that article to her alma mater, telling her, the females, the young women there, giving them some true real life advice that the most leftist feminists are not going to give these women. And of course she angered the feminists in this advice, but basically she told these Princeton Ivy League females, if they wanted to see parity, if they wanted to marry and have a husband and kids and have someone on their intellectual level, and I know that part of it might make a lot of people feel some type of way, but again, they are elitist. This is their worldview, this is their mindset. So if you can get over that, you can probably agree with what she's saying too. But basically she's telling these women, if you want that type of um, to marry someone on that level of intelligence, you need to do it now. When you look like this, not when you look like that. That's Susan Patton right there. That's the one we see right now on TV. But that's her, and she basically kept it 100. I agree with her absolutely. She's telling these females that there's a window of opportunity that's closing with age. And even though the narrative from the left, the feminists, is, focused on career and going to make money for some other guy, and avoid the family life and make sure your husband drop his balls and be a stay-at-home dad and all that nonsense. That's the narrative from the left feminists, and it's not too many women telling women, the real life deal. Like, yo, you can't be 35, 30 trying to find parity, because the numbers is not there. And if you want to do it, you need to do it in your youth. And of course there's always some chick gonna bring up the exceptions to the rules and the whole concept of the cougar, completely ignoring that situation only benefits men. Women still end up getting washed out and burned out at the end of the day. That situation works good when it comes to dating and having sex. It doesn't have anything to do with being married and starting families. No one, the cougar's already been about that life. She's not, a valid candidate for starting a marriage with and starting a family with. It's just, I don't see how young females don't get that. But anyways, the narrative to me used to be that, for the most part, that non-black women go to college to get husbands. Not that they necessarily find them in college, but they find them while they're in college themselves. Whereas black women go to college to get their degrees. And it seems that there's a paradigm shift where the Ivy League Beckies are doing the same thing. They graduate, they go 10 years into focusing on building their career and not having families, and then they get in that 30-year-old range, which is what the feminists are acknowledging. That's when women tend to dumb down their careers and fall back because of biology and choices, not discrimination. But basically, these women are doing the same thing, and she's kept it 100 with them, though. She said, if you want this, in context, though, if she's talking to women that went to her school, and she's talking to women who have sent her questions about this topic, and of course, we live in a culture that people lack critical thinking skills, so all the feminists are like, well, what about women who don't want to have kids, or women who want to be career goal oriented? Obviously this article, this segment is not to you. Obviously it's for the people who the young women who think about this and are curious about this, and they're only hearing one side of the story, and they're not having women actually be honest with them and showing them, like, yo, there's a trade-off in this. And there was an article I read a few months ago, or a couple weeks ago actually, where it was talking about the sacrifices and the things it takes to be that alpha, CEO, boardroom person, 1%er. Most women, the majority of women, over 66%, do not think it benefits to sacrifice family for those positions. So, we know that's true. We know that's reality. Yet there's a lot of people trying to push that narrative away, and they want to believe in the freaking fairy tales. And then you have, again, Megyn Kelly, though. There's a part in the segment I'm about to show you next where, again, she's letting emotion and feelings get in the way of logic and reason. She says that she doesn't like the idea of it being said that, women of her stature, because she's an elitist too, we need to marry somebody that are just as intelligent as us, or more intelligent than us. And Patton responded, that's not necessarily me telling you that. That's what women actually want in that environment. So, you know, again, the feelings and emotion get in the way, and she doesn't want to acknowledge what deep down she probably really does feel and what really is real. But just hearing it out loud makes her think of how elitist she really is, and she might not want to hear that. But check out the clip of Susan Patton. She's basically telling you why she wrote what she wrote, and you know, screw the feminist. She's keeping it 100, and I respect what she said because it's real.
Cornerstone of your future and happiness will be inextricably linked to the man you marry, and you will never again have this concentration of men who are worthy of you. Here's what nobody is telling you. Find a husband on campus before you graduate. And whoa, did Susan Patton feel the backlash from that. Joining me now, the author of that letter, Princeton alum Susan Patton. Susan, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
First, let me ask you why you wrote this.
Because I think all the information that's being directed to young women today is about their career development, their professional advancement. Nobody is talking with them about the other part of work-life balance. Nobody is talking with them about the importance of thinking about family. And for those women who do want a traditional marriage and children, they've got to start thinking about it sooner rather than later.
Now, here is some of the blowback that you've received. This is just one example from Maureen O'Connor, New York Magazine, who says that this is an excruciatingly retro understanding of relationships. Your conclusion that a successful heterosexual relationship requires the man to be smarter than the woman, because Susan posits that the women at Princeton are very smart and should find very smart husbands, and the best place they're likely to do that is while they're at Princeton.
I don't think there's anything about it that's retro or anti-feminist or revolutionary in any manner. Women want to be married and they want to have children. Many of them do. Not all of them do. And very distinctly, my advice, and that's all it was, advice, nature of advice, take it, don't take it, it's all okay, was just start thinking about this sooner. I know so many women who graduate from these wonderful schools and invest the first 10 years after college doing nothing but professional development, building their careers. Now they're in their early 30s and they're starting to be panicked.
Mm-hmm. It is controversial to suggest that we as women need to marry men who are smarter than we are, or at least as smart as we are, in order to find happiness.
We don't need to. We want to. And if the women's movement has truly empowered us to make the choices that are best for us, this is one of those choices. Mm-hmm. And the women who are at Princeton and other Ivy League campuses and other extraordinarily well reputed universities of higher learning, they've invested in their academic achievement. They care about the pursuit of knowledge and the pursuit of excellence in a very real way. They didn't get to these campuses.
And you're not saying women who didn't go to Princeton do not, but you're saying this is characteristic of the women who are at Princeton.
And the advice was geared very specifically to the young women who are on the campus of my alma mater. Mm-hmm. That it went so viral so quickly makes me think this is a conversation that young women need to be having, because nobody is talking with them about this.
This is another thing from the New York Magazine response, that it is an elitist assumption that finding an intellectual equal outside of an Ivy League campus is next to impossible. And Maureen O'Connor says that this is an embarrassing window into how Ivy Leaguers talk to each other.
It's not impossible. You can certainly find a terrific person, a terrific life partner outside of Princeton. All I'm suggesting is that the concentration of these wonderful potential partners is greatest during your undergraduate years. From a sheer numbers perspective, the odds will never be in your favor the way they are here during these critical 4 years, to find not only, you know, a potential life partner, to find your best friends, to find people that you can grow in your life with and feel challenged by, to people who won't be threatened by you, people who won't be intimidated by your capacity for greatness.
Because this has been a problem for many well-educated women, that
Exactly.
they find this doesn't necessarily turn out to be a turn-on to some men. And this and a fellow alum from Princeton, what is her name, Nikki Muller?
Yes.
She came up with this video piece, much of which we can't air because it's a little R-rated, but it's "I went to Princeton, B-word." And she shares your pain. Here's a little bit from that.
So I play a diamond just in case you hate. I'll only name my college by the town of the state. You get intimidated when you learn my school? Well, you should. 'cause I'm smarter than you.
But now, people who didn't go to Princeton, I mean, I went to Syracuse, which is the Princeton of upstate New York. They may respond to this by saying these elitist, snobby, Ivy League people who think they're better than we are, or the guys may be thinking that.
I'm not suggesting anybody's better than anybody. I'm saying to the young women at my alma mater, if you want home, husband, family, start thinking about that sooner rather than later, because in this manner there is not equality between men and women. Men have a virtually unlimited window of opportunity to marry and have children. Women don't. Women clearly, there's a clear stop date, there's a clear end point to that possibility. So
this is another thing you've been hit for, though, because the criticism is that your suggestion is you can only get a man as a woman if you look good and are on the younger side, even if you're smart.
Not only,
and and if you're a man, you can always get a woman.
Yes. Yes.
You believe that's true?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do, Megan. Yes, I do. And I also think some of the criticism has been, well, at 22 you're too young to make a decision. You're too young to even know who you are. Who you are at 22 is not going to be who you are in your 30s.
Right.
Okay, wait till you're in your 30s. Who you are in your 30s is not going to be who you are in your 40s.
That is very true. That is so true. That piece is absolutely true.
So please, I mean, let's be reasonable here. This is a constant evolution. We are always going to be evolving, and if you find somebody who shares your intellectual curiosity, who shares your love of learning, who values the process of education and formal education the way you do, the likelihood is, as this evolution occurs, you grow with each other.
Strike while the iron's hot and the pond is full.
While the pond is full, exactly.
You know, it's interesting. I think what you've said is very controversial, and that doesn't make it false.
It doesn't, and I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. And the fact that this has gone everywhere, everybody is talking about this. And I've gotten letters from so many women on campus, not just Princeton's campus, but other campuses saying, oh my God, I've been afraid to even think about this, much less talk about it.
Yeah.
And now everybody's talking about it.
You opened the can.
I did.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. All the best. Thoughts on that? I would love them. Follow me on Twitter at Megyn Kelly. Let me know.
I'm saying to the young women at my alma mater, if you want home, husband, family, start thinking about that sooner rather than later, because in this manner there is not equality between men and women. Men have a virtually unlimited window of opportunity to marry and have children. Women don't. Women clearly, there's a clear stop date, there's a clear end point to that possibility. So
this is another thing you've been hit for, though, because the criticism is that your suggestion is you can only get a man as a woman if you look good and are on the younger side, even if you're smart.
Not only,
and if you're a man, you can always get a woman.
Yes. Yes.
You believe that's true?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do, Megan. Yes, I do. And I also think some of the criticism has been, well, at 22 you're too young to make a decision. You're too young to even...
President, your future and happiness will be inextricably linked to the man you marry, and you will never again have this concentration of men who are worthy of you. Find a husband on campus before you graduate. Yes, find a husband on campus before you graduate. That is just part of a letter to the editor of Princeton's student newspaper, written by the mother of a current student. That letter, by the way, as you may imagine, has stirred up a heck of a chorus of complaints. Susan Patton is the author of the letter. She's a Princeton grad herself. And Nina Bahadur is the assistant editor for the HuffPost Women blog and has some problems with all of that advice. They are both kind enough to join me now. Let the fireworks begin, ladies. Susan, I want to begin with you. You know, look, some people wrote right away, is this a joke? Did you mean this in satire? I want to ask you officially, on the record, on television, was this satire?
Not at all. This couldn't have been more serious.
So
My
obviously
feeling
the
was
next
that-
question is, you know, you had to know that the hackles would be up not on just the women of Princeton, but on women across the spectrum who think, are you kidding? You're suggesting a college kid look for a husband?
What I'm suggesting very specifically, and you understand that this letter was intended for a very small audience. It was the audience of women on Princeton's campus, because it happens to be my alma mater. And even more specifically, a subset of that group, those women who are actually interested in someday having a traditional family, marriage, and children. And my advice to them was, take a good look on campus now for a potential life partner, which is not to exclude pursuing a career, not to exclude other things, but add this to your mission while you're on campus and have access to this extraordinary community of extraordinary people. Get your world-class education, make your lifelong friends, and if you can find a life partner, good for you. And the problem is that
I just want to
the
say, as I
problem is
read
that
your
these
piece,
young women are.
Sorry, I just want to make it really clear to our viewers. As I read
Yeah.
your piece, I got the feeling that you were saying this because, in essence, men may be okay choosing women who aren't as intellectually bright as they are, but women aren't as comfortable with a mate who isn't at least at their level. Nina, you have some serious issues with this argument. What are they? Well, what's the most important issue that you have?
I think that I'm just not sure this is what we should be telling young girls that they should be looking for in their college experience. I think it's really important that young women learn how to be self-sufficient in college. They find out who they are, what they want, unrelated to a spouse, unrelated to their future. You know, girls need to learn what they need to learn in order to become the women that they want to be. And I'm not sure that you can do
It's
that.
a good point. Why not,
I don't
Susan? I mean, my God, they're going to school at 18.
I don't disagree with any of that. What I'm suggesting, though, is women who graduate and then spend the next 10 years of their lives focused on nothing but career find themselves in their early 30s with nothing but career. And for women who, in fact, want to be married and want to have children, to be in your early 30s and have a great job and nothing else, it now becomes panic time for them. So I'm just suggesting to those women who want marriage and family, keep an open mind, keep an eye out, because the window of opportunity to find a mate and to bear children is limited.
Alright, so notice the CNN anchor chick talking about they're 18 years old, they're just so young. What? I don't get that at all, because last time I checked, I know my grandmother was married when she was 16 years of age. So it's funny how we've dumbed down kids by making them, you know, more children. We've given them less responsibility and what have you and all that. Yet we give them access to do more adult things. You know, driving, military, drinking in some situations. Some parents allow their kids to drink. But it's like certain things we give them anonymity to do whatever they want to do. At the same time, we still treat them as little children when they're freaking 18, 19, 20 years old. In New York State, the consenting age is 17. A chick can be 17 years old in New York State, be away at college, have her own apartment, and be working part-time or whatever at 17 years of age. Yet she's saying that it's just too young. And I don't understand that, when women of the past did a hell of a lot more without all the opportunities that women have today at a younger age. I don't get that. That's a complete deflection based off absolutely no sense at all. Then the typical young feminist chick right here says, you know, well, they're just too young, they shouldn't be talking about that, they need to be independent, to be on their own. And then when do they have this conversation though? When do they talk about this? When they're 30 plus, not married, when they're realizing that, you know, their clock is ticking and they want to have a baby even though they're not married. And that's when we get into this whole new form of single motherhood, which we still don't talk about, is when you have the, you know, the collegiate college grad chick who, you know, doesn't have time to find a mate, and she wants to have a baby because she knows that time is ticking. So she goes out and she has a baby, whether adopted or in vitro or what have you, and she's a single mom because she didn't want to have this conversation when she was 18, 19, 20 years old, which is when you should have it. So their refute to what she's saying makes absolutely no sense. In context, she's talking to women who want to have children in the future, and she's giving them positive advice saying you might want to do it now, not even having it, but at least have a plan so that in the future, you know, you're not looking, you know, like, damn, I have all these degrees, more degrees than the mom, and I have this position, but I have no family. because nobody's gonna feel bad for you when that situation happens. Nobody's gonna care. The feminists damn sure ain't gonna care about that. They're gonna be like, you know, they're gonna throw you under the bus, saying like, why are you complaining about this now? We don't need you to talk about that. You know, traditional women aren't gonna have any sympathy for you because they say, hey, you were throwing, when I was starting my family and when I was doing those things, you were throwing shots at me as if I somehow let the feminist movement down or what have you by choosing to have a family or choosing a career that was less demanding of my time and attention, and I focus more on my husband and his provision, what have you. But I guess we'll see what happens.
This story out front. Ladies, get a degree and a ring. That is the basis of a controversial column from Susan Patton, one of the first female Princeton graduates. In a letter to the Princeton student newspaper, Patton, who has 2 sons, both of whom went to Princeton, advises the daughter she never had to, quote, find a husband on campus before you graduate. Smart women shouldn't marry men who aren't at least their intellectual equal. There's a very limited population of men who are as smart or smarter than we are, and I say again, you will never again be surrounded by this concentration of men who are worthy of you. But are these really words of wisdom? Out front tonight, the woman who wrote the article, Susan Patton, radio host Stephanie Miller, and CNN contributor Raihan Salam. All right, Susan, you stepped in it. Let me start.
I did.
Let me start with you. All right, you've been called an anti-feminist, an embarrassment, excruciating, regressive, but you stand by what you said.
Oh, I totally stand by what I say. I don't think anything about this is anti-feminist. It's not retrogressive. It's not even radical. Women do aspire to having children and marriage. However, the messages that have been given to young women today are so totally focused on developing their careers. Nobody is saying to them, if in addition to your career you also want to be married and have children, you should really start thinking earlier about it than you might be planning to.
All right, you're saying in addition to your career, and I understand that, but there's another way of looking at this. Some might say, let's look at the annual cost of going to Princeton. By the way, shock warning to anybody out there, I don't think it's worth going to those colleges anymore, but that's a separate issue. Princeton right now, $57,000 a year.
And worth every penny.
All right. And after 4 years, a minimum of $230,000. That's paying a lot of money to, as some might criticize you for saying, quote unquote, get an MRS degree.
That's not at all what you're paying that money for. You're paying that money for a world-class education. Further, you're paying that money to experience a community that will provide you with such a rich population of people with whom to form lifelong friendships, and if you're lucky, a life partner who you can grow with and form a family with and raise children with.
Stephanie, what's your response? Does she convince you, Susan?
Wow, Erin. No offense, Susan. I feel like I got in that car from Back to the Future and we're in 1952. Really? You have to get married in college? Don't studies show that the earlier people get married, the more likely they are to get divorced? Well, but you're saying find a husband while you're at Princeton or you're screwed. I mean,
no.
Is that your only choice?
No,
what if you, like Erin says, you can't afford to go to Princeton?
Firstly, I'm not suggesting that if you don't find a husband at Princeton, you're screwed. Secondly, I'm not even suggesting you get married before you graduate. I'm suggesting keep an open mind, keep an eye out for who you're surrounded by during your undergraduate years if you're on Princeton's campus. Now, the idea that at 20 or 22 you're too young to be married because you don't know who you're going to evolve into by the time you're in your 30s, I get that. But if you delay marriage till you're 30, you don't know who you're going to evolve into by the time you're 40. So this is an ever-moving target.
Susan,
what doesn't change
Susan,
is that women have a limited opportunity within which to bear children of their own. So the idea that you spend the first 10 years out of college doing nothing but develop your professional life, you will find yourself in your early 30s or your mid-30s with nothing but a professional life. I'm just suggesting, take a good look.
All right, Raihan, let me bring you in here.
Susan,
An appropriate moment to...
Nobody could be a bigger single loser than me, but I just am going to say, you're not asking women to lean in. You're asking them to lean back and think of Ward Cleaver. I mean,
I'm not doing anything of the sort. I'm asking them to think more
broadly. That should be your goal.
All right, so you see, this female didn't really refute anything that she stated at all. Again, more feelings, more emotions. No reason, no logic. The chick admits that she's the single loser who doesn't have any kids, who's still single, and she's advocating for more women to be in her boat. But I think it's odd how every time someone, even if it's a man or a woman, who makes this argument that Susan Patton is making, the first thing you'll hear from a leftist, feminist, liberal-minded individual is, well, you're trying to take us back to 1950s and blah, blah, blah. The hilarious thing about that statement is that a lot of modern American females who are these traditional / feminists, if I may, and I'll talk about that later, but they want the provision and the protection and the roles and the pedestals and the things of that nature of the evil patriarchy, when men put women on pedestals and they did things on their behalf. They want that part, but at the same damn time they want to be able to challenge them, to compete with them, to let him know that I don't really need you, but I want you when I want you. That's really the biggest issue right now. What I see with the current generation going up is that because the feminist chick is like, whatever, you don't have to deal with that, period, gone. But then when you have to deal with the modern American female who has, she's torn in the two directions of, the feminist narrative and then what she really wants deep down inside, and it's a war. And it's not a war for me because I wouldn't deal with it. Things would be set up front, and this is how it's going to be. And if it's not going to be like this, then we're not going to be together. That's just how simple it is. But it doesn't work that way for everybody. Everybody's not thinking about these situations. They don't have these conversations. So, and that's good that Susan Patton's telling women when they're young to have this conversation now. And don't be like the chick with the black hair next to her who's not married, still single, probably doesn't have any children. Yet she's defending that position to put more women in there.
Top Ivy League university. A former Princeton grad is advising them that the best place to find a good mate for life is right under their nose on campus. Her message, marry a Princeton man. ABC's Lindsay Janis is here with the story. And Lindsay, you actually spoke with her.
I did indeed. She says start looking for a husband your freshman year. It may sound like advice for a previous generation, something mothers might have said to their daughters in the 50s or 60s. But it's not quite that simple.
It's the letter making waves not just on Princeton's campus, but across the country, because it's filled with advice like this. Here's what nobody is telling you. Find a husband on campus before you graduate.
At first, I was shocked, but I do think there's some truth in what she's saying.
Susan Patton, the author of the open letter, was one of the first females to graduate from the Ivy League school.
It's not easy to get to Princeton. I'm just suggesting take full advantage of it.
Her missive to women of her alma mater is sparking a barrage of snarky headlines on the internet. One reading, Princeton grad warns undergraduates to find their husbands now because the rest of the world is too dumb.
It was just intended to suggest to these young women who are on campus today, keep an open mind. Look around you. These are the best guys. If the women's movement has truly done what it's supposed to do, it should enable all women to make whatever choices are appropriate for them, even if their choices are seemingly retrogressive.
In the letter, Patton also says that although men regularly marry women who are younger and less intelligent, ultimately it will frustrate you to be with a man who just isn't as smart as you.
I don't think you should be actively looking for your husband while you're at school here.
One expert we spoke to said it's actually not bad advice.
If you have similar value systems and you're both intellectuals, is it going to increase the chances that you'll have a successful relationship? Of course, that's a given.
But what do Princetonian women think of Patton's advice?
I don't think her entire point is completely wrong. Girls do want to date guys who are as smart or smarter than them, but in practicality, we are all way too young to be getting married now.
So Susan Patton didn't follow her own advice and marry a Princeton graduate. She recently divorced. She does have two sons, guys, one who graduated from Princeton, did marry one of his classmates, and one who goes there now.
But see, that one student made an interesting point, because when I heard this story, the first thing I thought was what she said, that I was too young, personally, at 22 to get married then. But I guess she's advising otherwise.
That's what a lot of the students said.
All right, Lindsay, thank you.
It seems like we have needed to have
Exactly.
for a long time, but it seems like you're surprised at how viral it went. I mean, you were giving advice to women like yourself.
I was giving advice to a very, very small population, to the women on the campus of my beloved alma mater, Princeton University, and more specifically, only to those women who are thinking that in addition to career and whatever else they want in their lives, if they want family, if they want children, if they want a traditional marriage, this advice is truly meaningful, substantial, and important advice for them. So it was not intended for everybody, but I think the message has clearly resonated because this is a conversation we have not been having, that young women have not been having. How and why the topic of marriage has become taboo for educated young women is just an atrocity. And I think that the women's movement has done these women a huge disservice. Instead of empowering them, they've disabled them. I was on campus several weeks ago for a conference on women and leadership that featured women a huge disservice. Instead of empowering them, they've disabled them. I was on campus several weeks ago for a conference on women and leadership that featured Princeton's president, Shirley Tillman, talking with Anne Marie Slaughter, who of course wrote the piece in The Atlantic about why women still can't have it all. And it was followed by a breakout session that afforded alumni an opportunity to speak on a more informal basis with undergraduate women. I said to all of them as a group, there were maybe 8 of them, I said, do any of you want to be married and have children? And before they sheepishly raised their hands, they had to look around, make sure they weren't going to be alone in this. And I thought there's something fundamentally wrong that these wonderful women are afraid to say, yes, I do want to be married and have children.